Welcome back to Before You Buy or Sell a Business. I'm Jared Johnson. Hey, this next episode was recorded live at Acquire Fort Worth. So if you haven't checked out the community group yet in Fort Worth, please come out and check us out. It's a big group that gets together. We network, we talk about all things entrepreneurship through acquisition. It's a great place to meet other people that are searching for a business or those that have already done it. So this one was recorded live there. It's Layne Kasper. He's a business broker in the area. We answer a lot of questions that searchers have been asking when it comes to business brokerage, and I hope you like the episode.
It's a two-way interview between a buyer and a seller. And if a seller feels good about a buyer, it can go a long way in the negotiations. Buyers will come to me and ask about what can I qualify for. That's when I'll tell them, you need to talk to Jared.
Yeah, I've got multiple brokers that require it. So, hey, this is, so-and-so, they're looking at this listing. Can you pre-qualify them? They are representing that seller. They're making sure they're not wasting their time. The last thing they want to do is start negotiating an LOI and then, 60 days later, 90 days later, they go, well, they actually didn't have any cash and they couldn't close.
You're listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business, hosted by Jared Johnson, the top SBA lender in the country. On this show, we break down business acquisitions, talk to industry pros, and provide real-world advice for buyers and sellers.
Maybe we can start off, kind of give your background, how you got into being a business broker and kind of what your normal day-to-day is like as a business broker.
I didn't take the traditional route to business brokerage, which there probably really isn't one, but I grew up in Fort Worth, went to high school here. I went away to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. After graduating from the academy, I was in the Air Force for 5 years. I was a weather officer in the Air Force, which is a few ticks below fighter pilot in the totem pole in the Air Force. But I enjoyed it. I was in Virginia at Langley Air Force Base for a few years, and then down in Del Rio at Laughlin Air Force Base, the pilot training base. But once my commitment was over after 5 years, I was ready to move back to Fort Worth. I was ready to get married and start a family. And at that time, my dad, who had started Kasper and Associates in 1984, his partner was retiring. And he said, if you want to learn this business, there's an open desk ready for you. So I thought that it'd be interesting. I had no business background from being in the Air Force, being in the weather field, really didn't know anything. But I, as a young executive looking to learn about what it takes to run a business, I was in good hands. My dad had been involved in business brokerage for a number of years. We had some good folks with the firm that would help train me. And I went to night school to get my MBA. And so got that accounting background to help me speak about financial statements and help business owners. Another good thing that I had going for me, even being young, most of the business owners that we dealt with were older. Old people like to talk about the weather. And so I knew plenty of things to talk about them to break the ice and get involved. So been doing this now for 29 years. The firm has been around since '84, so that's 42 years. We serve the middle market, lower middle market, mainly industrials. So manufacturing, distribution, business-to-business service companies in and around Dallas-Fort Worth. Dallas County, Tarrant County, the surrounding counties are where most of our clients come from. And we say we want to work with companies that have sales revenue from 1 to 70 million. So that is a wide range. A lot of our transactions are appropriate for private equity groups. Smaller transactions are more appropriate for searchers or people looking to leave the corporate world for an opportunity, and then also strategic buyers, which will look at companies of any size. So that's our focus, and we found that if we stick with what we know, we have a much better success rate.
Yeah, it's quite the background. I had a credit manager for a long time that was a weather guy, but in the Navy on the ships, and he'd tell me some pretty cool stories. But I guess the other thing people don't know is you usually have a pretty vast security background, because you have to kind of know what's going on and you have to advise people. So he would tell me some pretty cool stories that he's like, yeah, you don't think the weather guy gets to sit in on those meetings. So I'm sure you had some of those, but I might have to call you and ask you what's going on with the weather every now and then.
I'll tell you to look out the window and
Well, we never seem to know. I get a flash flood warning on my phone, and then I'm just looking like, what are you talking about? And then when we don't get one is when we actually get it. So cool. Okay, so maybe walk us through a normal transaction. So if somebody reached out to you, they decide they want to list their business, what do you look for? What questions are you asking? Kind of walk us through like how that actually works. I think it'll give anybody that's searching, or anybody that's is sort of curious what you actually do when you value businesses, a good perspective on how that works.
Sure, and I can even back up a little bit further, so you understand where a lot of business owners are when they get to that stage. Typically, it's where they have their retirement age, or they have health issues, family issues, and they know that they need to sell their company, but they really don't know who would help. They don't know how much their business is worth, and they have no idea how to sell a company. And so they also don't know about firms like mine. Most business owners really have no idea about whether business brokers or M&A firms or whatever you want to call it. And so they'll go to one of their trusted advisors, their attorney, their banker, financial planners, and say, who do you know that could help me with my business? And so we spend a lot of our time networking with those trusted advisors to build up relationships and a reputation with them, so that they're comfortable recommending their clients to us. As an aside, for those of you looking for businesses, perhaps some proprietary deal flow, I would recommend going to those same types of people, those advisors, because there are business owners that would much rather deal directly with a buyer rather than pay an intermediary like me. And so those key advisors are a good resource for deal flow, just like they are for me. That's where we rely on referrals for our business. So once a business owner is introduced to us, even if it's 3-5 years out, they're just wanting to talk about what's involved in the sale of a company, or they're ready to get started, we can help them at any stage. We love it when they come to us when they're planning and thinking about it, because there are things that they can be doing that will position their business to sell in the marketplace. But we can also come in the day after the funeral or the day after the diagnosis, where they have to do something right away, planning or not. So we have the initial conversation with the business owner. They want to know what's involved, what's the process, and most importantly, how much is my business worth? And that's where we will do a preliminary valuation, which we don't go into the full analysis. We ask them to provide some information about their company, financial data, information about sales as well, so that we can give them a ballpark figure of what they could expect when they go to market. Sometimes that's the end of the conversation. It's, if that's all I can get, then I'm going to hang on, or I'm going to go to a different firm, or I'm going to do something else. When we've just told them that their baby isn't as pretty as they think it is, but we feel like we need to give them good information so they can make a proper decision of what they want to do. So we'll do that. We'll give them the preliminary valuation. If it meets their expectation, they understand, then we'll get started. We charge an advance portion of our fee to our clients. So a business owner that wants us to go ahead and market their company will pay us an advance fee. It's not a large percentage of what the success fee will be at closing, but it's an investment in the process. And I mentioned that as you're evaluating companies, it doesn't hurt to ask, are they invested in the process, or are they just looking to see, hey, what could we get? Or maybe, is there anybody out? Are they just kind of dipping their toes into the water? We want to make sure that our clients are serious and that they really are looking to sell, because we're going to be spending a lot of time gathering information and doing all of the analysis to go to market. We want to find a client that is interested in getting to the finish line. So once we get started with our arrangement with the business owner, that's when we start asking for a lot of the information that you as a buyer are going to want to see. We'd like to gather as much of that as we can up front and put it together into our detailed acquisition report, or SIM. Different terminology for what we do. But we want to get as much as we can and put it into an organized format, so that when we do have conversations with buyers, we can, here's the information that you're going to need, and we can get that to you in an organized manner, help you to evaluate the company. We feel like that helps move things together quickly. Some of these things that I'm mentioning may be the same that every firm does. There may be some things that we do that other firms don't do, and you'll notice that as you talk to different types of intermediaries. Some go to a lot of detail and attention in putting together a report. Others may just ask their clients to give them some tax returns, and that's all that they provide buyers. But we feel like we can better represent our clients if we get the important information. It prepares our clients a little bit for what is going to happen during the sale process, the information that is going to be constantly asked from them, and the time that they're going to have to take in gathering that. We try to make it as painless as we can on our clients, but there is a lot of time and disruption to their day-to-day activities to provide the information that we need. Once we get all the information, we put together our report. That takes us about a month before we're ready to go to market with a company. And we have our clients review all of the data that we're putting together so that they can make sure that it's accurate, it represents their company well, and they're happy with it. So I can pause here if
Sure.
you need to get to that standpoint. That's when we're ready to launch and go to market.
And so when you're going through that process and you're, kind of presenting to them what you think a range will be, or, maybe even try to figure out a list price, how many times, or what's kind of the percentage of success you have that they move forward with you, or they were just kind of kicking tires to see if they actually end up wanting to list it?
I would say 50-50.
Oh, wow. Okay, I thought it would be higher than that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because in their mind, they've already made the decision to sell. They've reached out to one of their advisors, and so they have a need. They kind of check off all the boxes of reasons to sell the company, as opposed to if we were just cold calling and reaching out to business owners and saying, hey, I can sell your business for 10 times earnings or something like that, and then moving forward that way. At least they've already made a little bit of a decision to move ahead, and it comes from a trusted advisor. So it's a lot of times it's not, I'm going to interview your firm and then 3 others. It's, hey, my attorney told me that I needed to work with you, and so let's get started.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, this episode is sponsored by Carpenter & Co. If you're buying a business and you're getting an SBA loan, one of the requirements is likely going to be that you need to get life insurance. So why not go to somebody that I send a lot of my clients to, that I've trusted for many years, always available, always ready to answer the phone. They get stuff done very quickly. They work with a lot of different companies to make sure you're getting the best price. You're also getting it done as fast as possible. Check them out at life4sba.com, and that's spelled out LIFEFORSBA.com, and reach out to them, see what they can do to help you out. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Okay, so we'll move forward from there. So let's say they decide to move forward with you. Maybe kind of give us a brief idea of what you do at that point to kind of package it and bring it to the market, and then how you present those offers, or how you're kind of filtering through buyers, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you've been seeing lately of the number of offers or the number of buyers that are coming through.
Okay. Yeah, we will, once we're ready to go to market, we'll do I call it a more of a rifle approach rather than a shotgun approach, where we put together not only our detailed report, but our one-page teaser or profile that doesn't identify the company, but we send it to buyers that we know it may fit their criteria. And that's people we've had conversations with or been introduced. We have them in our database. We know what types of companies, industries, what size of company, sort of geography, all the characteristics. And so we know who it might be a fit for, of those buyers that we already have in our database. For our larger transactions, we're reaching out to private equity groups. Smaller deals, like I said, it's more to individuals, and that's where
What's the cutoff on that you would consider kind of
it,
large or smaller?
in general, say in revenue of 10 million and up, or EBITDA of $1 million and up is typically, $1 million and below is more for individuals or smaller family offices.
Okay.
We'll do that outreach. Our firm doesn't have a website where we post our listings. We don't use any of the free listing sites. Just that's a choice that we've made, feeling like we can better protect confidentiality for our clients by keeping our processes a little bit closer to the best. We do use some of the subscription-based sites that are mainly used by private equity groups, but we really would rather deal with people that we either know or that we've had been introduced by people that we know to protect our clients. And I'm going to back up again. If you understanding the role that I play on behalf of a business owner, like I mentioned, they don't know anything about the process in most cases. And they're relying on me to protect them through the process. And I say protect, that means they've got all this confidential information about their company. They have a certain time period that they want to sell their business in. And so they want us to bring them buyers who are serious, who are financially qualified, and who have the capability of actually getting the deal done. They trust in us to not waste their time with buyers who are going to waste their time. And so when we are doing our outreach, we're very mindful of that aspect of trying to make sure that we're contacting people that we feel like are going to either they can do the deal or they could do the deal if everything was right. I think you asked about what we're seeing in the market. I think talking to folks before, talking about how many more buyers there are than sellers. The last several transactions that we've done, I'm not a marketing genius, so I think I really started sending out my profile on a Friday afternoon, which probably isn't the best time to be sending emails out. But the response was incredible. And by Monday at lunchtime, I already had 15 people that had signed confidentiality agreements and were looking at our report. That speaks to how competitive it is for people that are looking to buy companies. And I think it also speaks well to our ability to reach out to those buyers. I'm one of the transactions I'm working on right now is a landscaping company, and we've sent out went to market in middle of January, and by the end of March had over 100 buyers that were looking at the company. So any business that goes on the market is going to have a lot of people looking at it. And so I say that to recommend, as you're searching, and if you see an opportunity that looks interesting, don't delay. Go at it full bore to try to make sure that it doesn't get taken out from under you.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been seeing as well, especially if you're, somewhere between 750 and 1.5 million in EBITDA. It seems to be pretty wild, the number of offers, the number of buyers. So I'm sure this is a question somebody would ask, but how can a searcher or a buyer stand out from others? What can they do to let you know they're serious? And then maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing from searchers that maybe aren't as serious or are maybe causing you to have a little bit of pause sometimes to deal with them.
Yeah, pet peeves of a business broker. That's I think the idea of the serious buyer, the financially qualified buyer. That's I think having your financial statement and information, say a letter from your banker, that kind of proves your financial capability on a transaction, that really helps. Any experience that you have that relates to that type of business also would lend itself. It's great when I get a business owner and a buyer together and they speak the same language. They kind of know the industry terminology and can relate to each other. The ice breaks really quickly when that happens. Things that make me feel like a buyer is not serious, when I've shown the detailed report, which has a lot of information about the company, and then I get a list of 30 questions asking about information that's in that report that I can tell they either didn't read or they just have this list of questions that they just send out to every broker about every company. Those types of signals just make me think, well, are they really serious about this company, or are they just kind of throwing darts at everything that they see?
Yeah, and I think that is partially what I saw probably 5 or 6 years ago of what has caused kind of some issues between brokers and searchers or buyers in general. Last month I asked several people kind of, what do you think the issue is, and why do you think that brokers and searchers seem to not like each other? Selfishly, I want y'all to get along because I end up being in the middle of it. I do think that brokers are necessary. I've done a lot of transactions where I end up being the broker, and unfortunately I don't get paid extra for doing it, and it's really frustrating, and it's it doesn't always go too well, where I end up kind of sort of having to help negotiate or try to get people to understand the emotions between a seller who's sending their kid off to college or a daughter to get married, and then a buyer that's coming in going, your kid's ugly and I want to change everything about it. And so you're trying to get them to play nice, and so I understand your role. But I think the biggest issue that I saw probably 5 or 6 years ago was having buyers or searchers come in, sort of shotgun LOIs out, and then they either couldn't close, didn't really ever think they were going to, but they're sort of tying up the seller's time in the transaction and wasting everybody's time. And so the brokers end up getting frustrated with the searcher. Now, on the other side, I also see their frustration sometimes. There is no way to sugarcoat it, but there's a lot of bad brokers out there. There's a lot of them that don't know how to list a business. They don't understand the pricing. do a lot of bait and switch, or kind of I was talking to Kevin earlier, is like the used car salesman type. And so there's frustrations on both sides, and obviously I want everyone to get along and get deals done, but maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of what you were seeing from that, and if that's really kind of what it is, and if there's anything else that a buyer can do to try to kind of mend some of that relationship.
Yeah, I understand the frustration that people have with brokers, and um, it's something that for our firm we appreciate that there are brokers out there that don't that give the industry a bad name, and in one sense it reflects well on us when we actually do handle transactions in with some expertise and with integrity. So we've tried to build our reputation on that. The thing about I think the mentality that a buyer needs to come in, it I think some assume it's up to the seller or the broker to sell them on why they need to buy that company. It's okay. Here, impress me. Tell me why this is such a great opportunity. Tell me why I should buy the company. But they never flip it around and turn the mirror on themselves. They need to be telling that seller why they want to sell to you. Explain. Not only financially qualified. I have this experience. I want to do this. I have these opportunities or ideas of how I'm going to grow your business. It's a two-way interview between a buyer and a seller. And if a seller feels good about a buyer and is impressed, it can go a long way in the negotiations. Sticking points that maybe if there wasn't a good relationship would be deal killers. Can often, if there's a benefit of a doubt given to one side or the other, can help ease the tensions during the negotiating process. So keep that in mind, that you're being interviewed as well when you're looking at a business.
Yeah, Kev, you got a question?
I do. You keep saying well-qualified buyer, and you're talking about 750 EBITDA, so that's somewhere $3.25, $4 million sales price. What does a well-qualified buyer look like? Credit score, cash on hand, experience. What does that look like?
A lot of times I leave that to the bankers to figure that out. But there are some, we know, like for a certain size of transaction, if they're going to go the SBA route, then they're going to need a certain amount of financing. And so, have that amount that they're going to have to put into the deal. So I look at it from kind of the basics, and then leave the, like credit. We don't pull credit scores on buyers when they're looking at our deals, but things like that, I'll leave that to the bankers to handle. And that's where even on some of the due diligence items, those are going to be found out by the bank as they're looking at the transaction. And just one thing, there are also cases where a buyer will come to me and they'll say, well, I have financial backers, people that are going to help me. And that's great. Great. I'm glad you have those backers. Can they join us at the meeting? Can they, I'd like to meet them as well. And so they can explain to me how they're going to back you. I want them involved in the process. So those certain aspects like that, where you can kind of get a better feel for someone's capability. It's probably similar to what
I was
you
gonna say,
do.
yeah, it's pretty much the exact same thing we're doing. We do have quite a few people that will reach out to us before they are making offers, and we're getting more listing brokers or kind of people that are involved in the process, wanting them to get sort of pre-qualified. So normally what I'm going to look at is their personal financial statement. We're going to try to get proof that they actually have the liquidity to put down for down payment requirements. If they are using investors or they have somebody helping them or backing them, we're usually going to want to see some evidence of that. We were sort of running the same problem where people are going, oh, well, I'm going to find investors, I'm going to take this to the market and raise capital once I find a deal. And we got tired of getting burned on that, just like the brokers and the sellers. So we require that up front. And then a lot of times when I see somebody's financial statement, it gives me an idea of kind of how they've been running their own personal balance sheet and what they can qualify for. So it gives us a little bit, extra kind of eyes on their situation. And a lot of times then we're able to go back to a listing broker or to a seller and say, hey, they're very well qualified. Like they could buy this company twice. Like they're in a really good spot. Or, I don't know if this is the right one for them, or they may be stretching a little bit. It also usually gives us an opportunity to kind of educate them on how that process works. So if you are searching in a certain price range or size, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to kind of walk you through what we'd like to see with that. Same thing with experience, like you mentioned. If they don't have any kind of direct industry experience and they're looking in an industry that is pretty tough, we're probably going to let them know you need to go partner with somebody, or it just may not be the right fit. So probably the same thing that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I've had when buyers will come to me and talking about what they're looking for, and they'll ask about what can I qualify for. That's when I'll tell them you need to talk to Jared. That's a really good way to help you narrow down, get a better understanding of what size of a transaction you can qualify for, or where you should set your sights.
Yeah, I've got multiple brokers that they require it. So if you sign the NDA, if you cannot demonstrate that you're already working with a lender, if they need financing or they don't have the cash for it, they automatically, when they sign the NDA, it goes to me and it'll say, hey, this is so and so. They're looking at this listing. Can you pre-qualify them? And then I go and work with them. A lot of times they end up buying something else, so it works out pretty well for me. But they're able to sort of go back to the seller, like you were talking about, and they are representing that seller. They're making sure they're not wasting their time. The last thing they want to do is start negotiating an LOI, and then 60 days later, 90 days later, they go, well, they actually didn't have any cash and they couldn't close. So sorry, most of the time you're going to lose the listing at that point because you've lost their trust. So that's what we saw over the years. So it's been kind of nice to be able to pre-qualify those buyers and try not to waste their time. I think sometimes making a connection, like you mentioned, between the buyer and seller can also help bridge some of those gaps if they're maybe a little light on cash, or but they've got the experience. Sometimes it makes it a little easier. I'm hearing a lot of sellers tell me they don't want to sell to private equity. They don't want to sell to a strategic buyer. A lot of the transactions I've done recently have been larger for us, 10, 12 million, with large seller carry notes because of that. Are you seeing the same thing?
We haven't done a straight private equity transaction in several years. And a lot of that, it's not necessarily that they didn't want to sell to private equity, but private equity has such a small box that they're looking for. They want a business owner who will sell 60% of their company. They'll stick around and continue working and answer to the private equity group out of Chicago, which for most of our clients, they're at retirement age. Like I said, they have health issues. They have a reason they need to exit. Their idea of selling is, I don't own this company anymore. And so they're not looking to sell a portion of it. They want to sell everything, stay for a transition, help out whatever's needed, but then they want to exit. That doesn't fit with the private equity model. It fits much better with a strategic purchaser, or with a searcher, or someone who's looking to do entrepreneurship through acquisition, where they're going to come in and operate the company. It's that operational role that really makes it difficult a lot of times for private equity.
Yeah, it makes sense. We're seeing quite a few people also try as a searcher to find kind of off-market listings, or everybody seems to be asking or looking for some secret sauce to find something that's not listed. Do you have buyers that approach you to help with their search? And if so, do you offer that? What goes into that? What does that cost? Is that something that's really a benefit for buyers?
For we will do, I would say 80% of our transactions, we're representing the seller in the deal. When we get involved on the buy side, it's mainly for a strategic buyer, say a company that's looking to make acquisitions, and they have targeted areas where they want to buy. Because the reason that I say that, they're going to retain us for a time period, pay us on a monthly basis to go out and do outreach to specific companies on their behalf. That financial model doesn't make sense for a lot of searchers. Just it's an additional expense that I think you don't need to hire someone to do your searching for you. You're out there. I had a talk today with someone who was asking about this same thing, and I asked about what he's been doing to get to the businesses that he wants to target. He's already done a lot of the work that I would do. He's reached out, found the owners, contacted them, doing all this, and so there's really no need for him to go to that expense to have an intermediary.
Yeah, so seems to be a lot of stuff is either listed or, kind of what I normally tell people is, like you said as well, is kind of get into that network. If you're looking in a very specific industry, try to find their networking groups, find out other individuals in that area that maybe did a search and already closed. Most searchers that have already closed are happy to talk to you and to kind of explain how it went. The community seems to be, pretty giving and are willing to talk about what they would have done or should have done. So it's always good to kind of also say, hey, well, what networking groups are you going to? What are you doing to kind of network with each other? And a lot of times you can play the long game and find a seller eventually that's ready to do it. But like I said, even if you do that, you probably want to get somebody in the middle, maybe even just an M&A attorney. Don't beat up your SBA lender and make them do it. So maybe we'll do a couple of little quick questions and then we can open it up for everybody else. What would you say is the weirdest deal you've done?
Does anybody remember bump stocks?
Yeah. Thanks to Route 91, right? Yeah.
I think I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
Those bump stocks are things you add on to AR-15s to make them basically operate like an automatic weapon. And there was a company that manufactured those, and I got involved in that transaction.
Yeah, it was in Fort Worth, right? Yeah.
So. Yeah, they a little bit. Their manufacturing facility was a little bit west of town, but it was interesting. And really, we hadn't been involved in a transaction involving firearms, and so it was educational to find out how so few private equity groups were interested or would invest in anything involving firearms. But there were several who were very excited about the opportunity. So it gave us, we had to really do some research and find those that would invest in that industry.
Yeah, we have a lot of banks that won't touch it either, which is kind of interesting.
A lot of the vice industries it's very difficult to find financing.
Yeah, I've tried to explain to them, like, you'll do a assisted living facility where potentially you have to kick some old people out on the streets if you foreclose, but you're not okay doing somebody that's manufacturing or selling anything in the firearm industry. It doesn't make sense, but whatever. Let's see. What is the most creative structure you've ever seen on a transaction?
I think that I don't know how creative it was, but it was something that was, it made it necessary in the transaction. The company had a very high amount of inventory, and a lot of that inventory had been in warehouse for a long time. And so the buyer looked at it, said, "This is bad inventory. There's no way I'm going to buy all of this." And the seller said, "Well, I tell you what, how about you just keep it here, and then I will sell it. I think I can go ahead and sell this inventory over time, but I just need you to store it, and then I'll pay you as I or I'll get paid as I sell this inventory. And so it worked out, and they were actually said, okay, that's fine. We'll collect, and then we'll pay you as that inventory is sold. So it was a different way of looking at solving that kind of problem. I've seen that done with accounts receivable as well, where there's some receivables that have just been on the books for a long time, and a buyer didn't want to take those, but the seller said, well, if I can, let me have those.
Yeah, makes sense. What are you seeing recently from, maybe like a multiple? Are you seeing multiples go up, go down, stay flat? And then when you're taking something to market, how close are you getting to the actual sales price to what the list price is?
You would think, with all the talk about how there's so many buyers, so few sellers, that would cause the multiples to increase, which maybe they have a little bit, but we don't really see that. Buyers are still sticking with their financial models. They need to get a certain return, and so for, say, a company with say EBITDA from 500,000 up to $1 million, I would say that's still in that 3 to 4.5 range. If you get over $1 million, I think you can start getting over, say, 4.5 to 6 times. I talk with a lot of private equity groups, and I try to ask them about what they're seeing in the marketplace as far as multiples go. And they will tell me about some process that they were in where they bid 6 times and they thought that was being aggressive. And then they say, and then this crazy group came in and offered 8 times, and we couldn't believe that. We lost that deal. And so I'd say, well, can you give me the number of that crazy group? I need to be talking to those buyers. Those are the ones that my clients want me to be bringing to the table. But it's, I think multiples are still low, and I think it also has something to do with the financing. I think
the leverage is always going to change that. I mean, if somebody's looking at it strategically, they're usually going to eliminate a lot of the expenses. So they may be paying 8 times, but once they eliminate 25% of the expenses, they're really paying 6 times, right? So it's kind of the way to look at it, I guess. But ultimately, from a bank standpoint, or if they're using SBA, we have to meet certain debt service coverage requirements. And so it's going to kind of keep the multiples down or require a larger equity investment.
Or the higher seller note.
Yeah.
And that's usually, we encourage our clients that to offer some seller financing, not a large portion. I'd say 20% or so. Just because of the message that it sends to the buyer, but it also is a way of allowing them to get closer to that asking price, what they're looking for. I don't have any numbers as far as how close we're getting to our original preliminary valuation, but a lot of times when a business owner or a seller gets fixated on a certain number, if they can't get within a 10% range of that number, then they're going to want to move on and just keep looking for a different buyer.
Yeah, typically what I'm seeing is 10-15% off, and then I've also seen quite a bit recently that actually go way over because they are getting 150 offers, and somebody really wants that specific industry and they've been looking for a long time, or it just makes more sense for them. So. Cool. Well, thank you. We'll open it up for questions. If anybody's got any, feel free to raise your hand and we'll see what we can answer.
How many deals will you have in the hopper at any time? You're either taking to market or coming to market soon?
Yeah, we're a small shop. There are 5 of us in the firm. And so if we get 4 deals done in a year, that's a great year for us. We would love to have, say, 5 transactions going at any certain time. We do, along with our business sale transactions, we do valuation work as well. So we have a little bit different mix in projects. The last several years, really since COVID, with deal flow being as a little bit slower pace, we've had right now we have 3 transactions that we're working on. So it's not where we want it to be. We need deal flow to be a lot higher.
Yeah, but I've been hearing that quite a bit from brokers in general. Probably about 3 months ago, I started to hear a little bit more. And it's a lot of people that I work with for 10, 15 years that are going, hey, how are you doing? I'm slow. And I'm like, whoa, if they're slow and they're usually some of the busiest ones in the country, like it's probably going to slow down. And then more recently, I'm starting to see it slow down a little bit. So, because we're usually about 3 to 6 months kind of behind the listings. So I couldn't really figure it out yet. The only thing I can think of is there's definitely some uncertainty in the market. So I think sellers are kind of trying to see what they can do as far as hanging on to the business. They may not be ready to sell. They want a certain number and they can't get there. But I think we're also seeing buyers get a little bit more educated, and then also the access to capital has come down a little bit. So most of the banks have been a little bit tighter, a little bit stricter. They're not just doing every deal like we kind of saw late 2020, 2021, 2022. There was a lot of lenders that were just financing everything, and they obviously didn't do very well after that with rates going up and everything. So I think a lot of buyers that maybe called themselves searchers or were looking to get into the industry are starting to realize it's a lot harder than they thought, and so they're not coming and knocking on doors as much. And then sellers are probably kind of doing the same thing where they're going, I kind of want to hang on to this, see what I can figure out.
That brings up something I think as you're starting the search or continuing your search, the team that you have around you is really important. Jared is an excellent resource for you. Not all bankers are looking to help their clients the way Jared does. Some, it's more the okay, show me your deal. Sorry, can't do it. No feedback. No, oh, let's find another way to get this done. That's, if you can find someone like Jared for that, as well as on the attorney side or who you have for due diligence, people who are on your side and looking at the same goal that you have of finding ways to get the transaction completed rather than just shutting things down. I think that's important as well. I'd offer that if I can be a resource for you, and even if it's not through a deal that you find through our firm, if I can make a recommendation to an attorney or a CPA or some other due diligence assistance, I'm happy to be a resource to plug you in, knowing people who are helpful and who can help you get deals done. It's something that some buyers get frustrated when they can't keep running into dead ends when they're trying to get a deal done. And a lot of times, if you've got a good team around you, they can help you out.
Can also tell you that it should be a dead end.
That might be, yeah. That's true. Good point.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So I'm probably going to talk out loud a little bit here, but so it makes sense given all the searchers that are in the market, right? Because they're coming out of universities and people are looking for different careers. That makes a lot of sense. But also you've got I don't know what the number is, but a large number of small businesses that have aged but are not in market currently. Do we know why that's not the case, especially given the boomer ownership of those businesses, and they're just kind of sitting on it? Is there a reason why it hasn't really unlocked at this point?
That silver tsunami that everyone has predicted, and that's really been predicted for 10 years, which I think the original forecast of it was business owners that hit 65. The previous generation, when they hit 65, they're ready to retire, sell the business, move on. The baby boomers are not like that. They are, if they're in good health, they're staying with their business, they're continuing to run it. Our clients are getting older and older, and we're having conversations with 80-year-old business owners who say, I don't know if I'm ready yet, which their family members are pushing them to our office to have those conversations. But it's something that I didn't appreciate until within the last 6 or 7 years. If you think about a business owner, every day they go into the office, it's their kingdom. Everyone there is there to cater to them, speak to them in a polite manner. They run the business. They call the shots. When they go to their trade shows, all these people in their industry look up to them. They're the expert in the field. They get status from being a business owner. And the thought of, what do I do if I don't have that? These people at my company, these are like family members, and I'm not going to be around them anymore. And people aren't going to be looking up to me as a business owner. I'm just, a gal or a guy. I'm just another one. That aspect of it is something I didn't appreciate until recently, about how a business is tied to their identity. And I think that has something to do with why business owners are holding on to their companies as long as they are. But I think it speaks also to how you should approach a business owner when you're trying to buy their company, is being very respectful of what they've built, what it means to them, and what it means to their identity.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Same thing. Yeah, we've seen a lot of deals with kind of crazy structures or lower prices, and asking the buyer, like, how in the world did you do that? Like, oh, well, I just really connected with the seller. I made sure that, I was going to keep the company the way it was. I understood why they, built the business the way they did, why they keep it that way, why they're selling, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people come in and kind of immediately want to say, you don't know what you're doing, you're old, go out to pasture, let me take this over and run it. And that's not what a seller wants to see. Same thing that you were saying. I mean, so many of them tell me, this is what I've done for 40, 50 years. And then we were seeing a lot when, for a couple of years there, we were able to do where sellers could roll equity. They didn't have to guarantee a loan or anything. And I would talk to the sellers and ask them, how do you feel about selling, 90% of your company and sticking around? And I had a lot of them tell me, no, this is great. I can still go to the office a couple of days a week. And a couple of them actually told me I can hide from my wife still for a couple of days a week. So I think that's a lot of what it is now. We were seeing a lot more volume when you could sell and still stick around and have 5 to 10% and do what you actually want to do with a company. Maybe that's sales or marketing, something like that. But now, kind of taking away some of that has caused a little bit of a strain on selling. But I think you're right on. A lot of these sellers that are 65, 70 years old, they're kind of like, no, we still got 10 more years before we really even need to pay attention to it.
Or I'm going to be, I'm going to live for another 20 years. How am I going to do with this? Well, this income, and all the expenses that I run through the business and things like that. It's also interesting. The Gen X guys are the ones that they hit 50 and they're like, I'm out of here. I'm tired of working so hard. So it's funny how the different generations have that attitude toward their business.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sure.
So you mentioned that you do 3-4 deals every single year. Like Jerry mentioned, market is not most sellers. But I wanted to know, is there like a specific constraint that you guys have? You pick that constraint.
Well, deal flow. Yeah, deal flow. Solves a lot of things. And I don't know. It may have something to do with the way that we market ourselves and the approach that we take to try to find that deal flow. There are other services that we've branched out in, like the valuation aspect. We started offering that aspect of the business, especially for, say, partners when they're setting up a buy-sell arrangements. They don't need us to help find a buyer for them, but they need our expertise on the valuation aspect of it. So I wish there was a magic wand that I could wave, but we still, it's just basically getting out there and making people aware of what we do and hoping that we catch the right ears.
Lower the interest rates, don't help.
Might help. That might help multiples go up too, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when it was that long of prime staying the same. I had a couple of clients that said, well, my rate was fixed. I said, no, it just didn't adjust for 10 years. Like he just didn't know. And they're like, wait, what? So yeah, it was pretty rough when everything went from, people paying 5, 6% to 11, 12%. So, I think we're kind of soft where we are now. And I don't know that it's gonna, work its way back down anytime soon. Anytime we have a huge drop, it's usually because something really bad's going on. So we don't really want that either. So hopefully, it'll stay kind of steady. But I think a lot of it is just cycles, and we'll see some more stuff come out pretty soon. But we'll see how it goes. But, any other questions?
I have a question. Earlier you mentioned, well, about the deal flow issue. I guess my question to you is, are there any industries that you're kind of staying away from, outside from the bump stock, which I've been looking for one of those. I don't know what bump stock is, but aside from firearm industries or things that seem to be very wedged or politically charged type of organizations, are there industries that you stay away from, that you just kind of shy, or maybe it's AI going to be impacting them more, or are you hearing that kind of discussion out there?
Yeah, I haven't seen that, and that may come up more in the financing world, where they're looking at ways that are protected against AI. For our firm, we stay away from things like retail, restaurants, just because those are such tough industries to work with, and we don't have a lot of buyers who are interested in those. That's not to say that there aren't people that are able to successfully sell restaurants or retail businesses or things like that. It's just our firm focuses on the industrial side. I haven't really heard much, except for maybe on the software as a service. Those types of companies seem to be they're getting out of favor in the industry, but haven't had any that we really have said we need to stay away from that business.
Yeah, the SaaS companies, multiples historically were enormous, and I think people started to realize there was a lot of them that weren't actually software, and then sort of realized that a lot of it had kind of continued to like regenerate itself, and they were just trying to get higher multiples. So, and I think a lot of that went away with a lot of the VC money kind of going away as well. So people got tired of chasing a home run and never hitting that ball. So for us, like we're seeing a lot of problems in the industries of like digital marketing when it comes to AI. So I would say last year there was like one period where I think I had like 14 deals in like 2 weeks that were digital marketing, and I'm like, what is going on? And like, oh, everybody saw that ChatGPT got popular, and then everybody dropped their digital marketing, and so then everybody said, I better sell my company before my numbers drop. So we didn't do many. I think maybe we did one or two that seemed to be not affected by it for whatever reason. But that's kind of one of the companies that we saw sort of running into problems because of AI, and we've sort of stayed away from. We've also seen that in consulting. There's been sort of some change in that because of AI. Outside of that, we've been pretty open to kind of the normal deals. We will struggle a little bit with e-commerce depending on kind of how they do things. If it's real easy for them to lose market share or have competitive problems. But other than that, we've been pretty open. A lot of same stuff that you list, tons of landscape, HVAC, anything construction seems to be what people want to buy. They end up doing, 15, 20 of those a year, no problem. I don't think I've done a restaurant in probably 3 years. Partially same problem, just run into so many issues with them. And I think a lot of the buyers that I work with tend to be more of the searchers, and they don't look for restaurants. So don't find them there.
When it comes to searchers and successful deals that you've seen go through, are you seeing any trends recently in specific sectors where individuals are successful in purchasing a company in those areas?
Not necessarily in certain industries, but we're kind of seeing a similar model where They may put in some of their own cash towards the transaction, but they're putting in a larger equity investment than what's actually needed, with 10% requirement with the SBA. They're putting in 10, 15%, having the seller carry 10 or 15%, and then also holding like another 10% on the balance sheet. And they're usually raising like that 15 to 20, 25% equity difference, and bringing in investors, even though they don't need them. So a lot of the buyers we're working with are coming from, investment banking, private equity, big consulting, or they, a C-suite in corporate America, and they've got a good amount of liquidity, but they don't want to use it. They want to raise the capital. And sometimes some of the investors that they're working with are also a little bit strategic, where they've got accounting firms that, are going to handle that side of the business, or they've got some good expertise and some advising they can do. But then they're also putting a large amount of cash on the balance sheet so they can take that business and grow, and then also be able to sleep at night because the leverage isn't as high. Those deals are being done. They're being a lot more successful. We're getting a lot less calls 6 weeks later going, what do I do? I don't have enough liquidity, or, seller stole the general manager, so on and so forth, all things that happen. We're getting a lot less calls with that. We're getting a lot more calls 6 months later going, hey, I'm doing really well. I want to make a large principal reduction payment, or, I'm looking at another deal. Can we talk? So it's kind of more what we're seeing. And then outside of that, if it's not somebody bringing in investors, then we're seeing a lot of people that are looking for a company that has that middle management. So they're looking at it from a multiple standpoint and seeing a normal multiple, but they're not having to walk in day one and hire 3 or 4 people and eat up $200,000 to $300,000 of that EBITDA right away by salaries. When we see those deals seem to be pretty successful because they can truly come in and actually like guide the business and work on the business, rather than immediately having to replace people or hire people. And realistically, that business shouldn't have been sold at that multiple, because the seller was wearing 4 hats and probably should have been spending another $200,000 or $300,000 on salaries. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming out. I'd obviously reach out and see if you can get on his short list of buyers when he gets a listing. Next month we're gonna try to see what we can do to work with somebody that's recently bought a company, and we'll try to interview them, see what we can find out. So get your questions ready for that. Leave your name tags if you can. With Heather, but she has to put up with me 24/7, so be nice to her. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Thanks.